Welcome to episode 2 of the Lights at Full podcast. My name is Brian Smith. With me is Brent Schmidt. Yes, we have the same initials and similar sounding names, but we are different people. I promise you. Today, we are going to talk about probably one of the most controversial subjects in the DJ industry. No, it's not the use of the sync button. This is whether or not you should be buying what are commonly known as China lights or factory direct if you want to be a little bit more specific about it, because all of our lights are made in China, whether you like it or not. So we have a lot of stuff to cover on this episode and a lot of discussion. And I promise you, I am not going to insult you, whether your viewpoint is on one side or the other side of this. And I think you will find that there's a lot of overlap on people's opinions on this, just with a little bit of different nuance. So Brent, what do you think about China lights?
Just like everything else, in this ecosystem, everything has a place and a purpose for it. My stance personally on it is you get what you get, honestly. And that can be said for both name brand and factory direct. So, majority, I would say probably about 98% of what I own in my inventory is all name brand. That other 2% is for its given purpose, for something that is just a one-off type of stuff, and then it never sees the light of day ever again. So that's me. Brian, what about you? What's your take?
Yeah, I agree with you. You do get what you pay for. And just to kind of give you the other end of this, like I would say that my lighting inventory is probably about 50-50. Name brand versus factory direct. I think one of the biggest things that pushes this conversation forward, or that why we're even having this conversation, is definitely, you get what you pay for. It's the cost. I love you DJs, but we're all notoriously cheap bastards. And everyone loves to try to save a buck here and there where they can. And, since the factory direct offerings kind of came into the market, they've exploded and people have gotten really into it. I feel like the first controversy, or the first one way before the brands, and we'll talk about some of them later on, was, your Kitten Lin lights or your Apple Lin lights. If you're going back to the origins of these kind of coming into our thought process, you had, these, Chinese women with funny names, that were selling lights that you sent them a Facebook message. It's gotten a lot more organized. But yes, cost is definitely, I think, one of the big things. So I don't know. One of the things that I think about when I'm thinking about the cost of these lights is the replaceability, or the service, or warranties, things like that. Those are all really important things. And for me, when I look at factory direct Chinese uplight, I am almost looking them as disposable items. If you've ever had an uplight walk away from you, or multiple uplights walk away from you at an event, that is painful. It hurts. And that's why I think you see so many people, and I think that's why it was one of the original things that really took off so much, was people buying these uplights, because it did kind of become a disposable thing. If it walked away, it sucked, but you weren't losing a $600, $700, $800 uplight. You were losing a $100 to $250 uplight. So, and that's, definitely one way to think about it, but there's so much more than just this that goes into it. Brent, what are your kind of thoughts on the cost aspect of this?
I definitely agree. You can buy, let's say, 100 of these factory direct fixtures compared to, let's say, 60 or 70% compared to the name brands. It's one of those it walked away. I lost $150, but oh well. And it literally just comes back down to you get what you pay for. And you could turn that light on if it's a battery powered uplight for, a wedding. And it might not turn on because it's not only dead because of the battery, but it may just never work ever again because of whatever that they did. And that kind of comes down to the quality control aspect of, they might put them on a bench and turn them on to show you what they look like. But that, again, it's like a magician. They're showing you what you want to see, not what you're actually going to potentially see. Yeah, one of those fixtures might be on the bench that you are getting, but it also may not. Or if they send you a video or a photo of like, hey, here's your batch of lights that you just ordered. Yeah, they're going to work for that because it's for you. They might make sure that, hey, it's fixed and everything's working so that you see exactly what you're going to get. But then by the time it gets in a crate, gets shipped over either air or a cargo ship, stuff can happen. Again, this can be the same thing for name brand fixtures as well, but they do a second or a third check on all these fixtures that come in. Now, I can say from a name brand perspective, if they order, let's say, 50 containers full of fixtures, they're probably going to go through between maybe 5 to 10% of those fixtures just to make sure that and it's not just like one container that they're going to check and that's it. They're going to check, a couple here off this one and then a couple off, container 6 and 12 or whatever, to make sure that the consistency, the quality is constant to what their expectations are from their design processes. And they put those things through the ringer. Like they run them 24 hours to make sure that everything is, not catching on fire. The lights and the diodes are correct in their color mixing and their codes, and make sure that they can handle what they're specifically designed and sold for to handle in whatever type of, if it's an outdoor rated fixture or, standard lighting fixture. So quality control is probably one of the biggest things that, again, they're all made in China. We all know that, but it's the additional quality control that they're constantly doing for these fixtures.
And, that's a interesting thing. And I just kind of thought about this as listening to you talk about it, and I'll call it out. Chauvet fixtures, right? A lot of them these days, they don't have that digital, scoreboard looking menu screen anymore. They have like the nice little LED screens that you can read and has more information on it. And there are a few fixtures that I have that are Chauvet that have that. And I've gotten stuff that's brand new, factory sealed, and you open it up and they have a hour monitor on them. So they have a runtime, so how long they've run. And sometimes you'll get these brand new out of the box lights and you'll see that they've run for 3 hours or they've run for 4 hours. Like that's how like they have actually pulled that light out before they actually packaged it and tested it out themselves to make sure that it works. So it's not like you're not getting a used light, it's like it's only a few hours on it, maybe 24 max, like, but that way that they have tested that light.
I'd rather have 3 or 4 hours on it knowing that it's going to work versus pulling it out of the box and be like, crap, I got it, one that is dead. Like, how is this possible? It's brand new. Like,
yep. And stuff can happen. And that's definitely a possibility when you're buying these lights. I mean, I have had lights come to me that were dead in the water. Not a lot, but it happens. But sometimes it's like just a stupid little thing. So like I have had that happen, and me being a techie nerd, I open up the light and I'm like, well, why isn't this working? And its connector isn't seated right, and you reseat it and it works fine. But like, it's little things like that. Like, part of what you're getting when you are doing the quality control, buying the name brand lights is like, if they find that, they're going to go through and they're going to fix that before they even ever package it up and send it to you. So I think like if you are willing to forego the quality control aspect, you also have to be comfortable with and realize that like, yes, you may be getting lights that do not work right or do not turn on at all. And, are you going to get really pissed about that? Because you shouldn't, because that's what you paid for. And are you just going to say, well, this one doesn't work and toss it and create useless junk? Or are you willing to like be a little bit tech savvy and open something up and be like, okay, I can see why it doesn't work because the fuse wasn't seated right, or this connector wasn't fully plugged in onto the circuit board. Like you have to understand that you're going to have to do those things. You have to be willing to do those things if you're going to buy these lights. And then and within your skill set, but like understand that like knowing a little bit of basic electronics, is something that a skill set that you need to have when you buy these lights if you don't want to be sad and frustrated with them all the time.
And shout out to all the DJs and tech nerds that are tech savvy in that spec, like where they can solder and fix those things. If you do, that's great. And if that is your your answer to why you buy that, that's totally fine. Then that you got to put some bench hours on those fixtures. Totally fine. that is definitely not the argument here at all. Like, I applaud you because you're a step ahead, because you understand that I can just quickly fix this with a couple, few minutes on the bench.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, it's, kind of coming back to, it's the cost, it's the quality. And it's like, there are times when, you want to get these lights because you need to scale up quickly. And like, I get that too. Like, I mean, there are times
Yep.
there I've been like, shit, I need way more lights than what I have for this event. And like, I got to scale up quick. And that's a good way to do it. But again, you have to be prepared for it not working the way you want it to work. And you have to be comfortable with that. And like, I've seen guys on the the Facebook groups and stuff like that getting really frustrated about, oh, these lights sucked because they didn't work. I was like, yeah, that's gonna happen. Like, so stop complaining about your factory direct lights not necessarily all working, or you need to tweak them to get them to work. Like, that is what you're paying for or not paying for.
100%. So we've covered costs; they're cheap. We've covered QC; it's usually not up to the standards. Now, let's just dive in really quick to R&D, research and development for these fixtures. Brian, like, give us a little bit of some background on Chinese fixtures versus the name brands. What are they doing?
Yeah, this is like one of those things that there is a lot of nuance to it. There's not necessarily a lot of hard proof on things, but there's definitely circumstantial evidence. One of the things that we can tell you right off the bat, and Brent can definitely speak way more to this than I can, is, these, the main manufacturers, we're talking the Chauvet's, the American DJs, the Elations, they have people that are developing these, are electrical engineers. They're coming up with the ideas. They're figuring out the parts and the mechanics and the materials they want to use, even down to the outer shells of these lights, whether it's, a cheap aluminum or, a harder metal or, a fire, thermoplastic, they are thinking about all of these things, and that's part of what you're paying for. So when you're getting them from China, the question is, is any of that happening? And I think that I would say probably about 75 to 80% of the cases, it's not happening. I think there are some outliers, and we're going to talk about some of these a little bit later on. And yes, we will name brands, but that I think are doing some of this work and are worth paying attention to. But some of these lights are being developed in the United States or in Europe or wherever, and then being sent over. And then some lights, and there are some, I would say, mid-brand, and I may not necessarily name some of these, but there are some more mid-brand lights that are maybe a tweak of what a Chinese factory has developed or has come up with, and it's more of a rebadge or rebrand. But I think I'm going to kick this over to Brent because he can talk way more about the actual engineering portion of this with the name brand lights.
Yeah. I can say for certain that when these name brands show up at conferences, expos, they're asking questions, and not only in physical form, but also in the digital age with, Facebook groups and just their, emails, inquiries that they're coming in and that they're, pertaining. They want to know what we need in the industry. Like, they are always advocating to figure out, like, what can we do as a company to make your job, from a lighting designer, from a DJ, from whatever aspect, to make it easier, to give you the exact products that you're looking for or the correct color temperature and things. I could say, like, I was ecstatic to see when Chauvet announced the new Freedom Parts that came out, and they have candlelight all the way up to cool whites color temperatures. That is a game changer in, we'll talk about it in a future episode, and when it comes to uplighting and taking your offerings and services to another level, because now you can replicate a candlelight feel for weddings. So in all of that, they are listening. They want to give you the best product that they can. And it's not because they want you to, be a diehard representative of them. They want to make sure that your events are being successful in the best way possible. So when you go out to these expos, conferences, things like that, and if they're there, talk to them. Like, really, pick their brain. They'll tell you stuff like, hey, like, we really want to try to figure out how to offer this better, or how to make this, product better, and really take it to the next level so that we can do things that are a little bit different in our industry. Even if it's a battery powered fixture, a wash light, or a mover and things like that, like they want to know that. And a lot of people always say, like, well, why didn't you add this on top of this fixture? Like, why didn't you add wireless, communication to it? It's like, okay, we can have that discussion, but how much more are you willing to pay for that addition to that product that you're already paying X amount for? Now, when it comes to the Chinese one, the factory branded ones, you're not having those conversations. They're literally just like probably scoping the internet with all these DJ discussion groups, and probably even maybe and again, I don't know for a fact, because I'm not there and I'm not seeing how these communications are working, but maybe they're just saying, all right, like this company is coming out with wireless addition to this fixture. Now we're going to take it to our factory and make it eighth of the cost of what it really should be. That type of stuff. A lot of these companies that are the name brands have contracts or some type of agreement with these factories that are exclusively making their products. And that, helps to kind of make sure that no one else is taking their proprietary technology and communications with how the fixtures are being developed, because they are spending a lot of money into developing these fixtures for us, like to make our jobs easier. So when you're supporting factory direct, you're not supporting the companies that are always answering and in constant communication. They want to keep learning and knowing exactly what we need from our industry. So again, that's just a quick tidbit. And again, that doesn't skew my decision and where my stance is on that, because again, it's just like a tool. Like there's a reason why we have a huge toolbox of things, because we need different tools for different applications. So with that, kind of jumping really quickly into copying, Brian, what are your thoughts on like some of these factory directs just copying the crap out of name brands?
I mean, that was kind of one of those things that I just really, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, yep, I just want to get on this real quick, because you'll see that a lot of the fixtures that come out from the factory direct, offerings, the features that they have are usually about a year or two behind the major brands. They're coming out with the features after the major brand has already come out with it. Now, again, that begs the question: is it a direct copy? Is it stealing the intellectual property? Is it reverse engineering the light? Brent already kind of hit on that. Are they buying these lights, taking them apart, and seeing how it all went together and trying to figure out how to make it cheaper? I think the answer is D, all the above. There's a lot going on there. And that's one of the things that you'll see is that like there's not much innovation in the factory direct lights, right? The set of features that comes out is something that already exists in the world in 90% of the cases. And kind of hitting too on the asking DJs, asking the industry what they want. If you go on to Alibaba, AliExpress, any of these sites where you can source all of this instead of having to go directly through Kitten or Apple anymore, you see that they are throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. There's all kinds of random fixtures, there's random stuff. I mean, I scope these things out all the time. Sometimes I see stuff as like, you know what? That's cool and that's interesting. And it's not necessarily like, it's not an innovation, it's a design thing. It's like they're gonna like, oh, let's put this together, let's put these different elements of different lights together into one and see if people like this. They exist for a little bit or they don't. And some of those lights that have kind of come out have actually turned into pretty standard things that we see to kind of get into some of the brand stuff here. Super popular, whether you're getting them direct or whether you're getting them through a US based middleman. Like the both uplights, the IR4 uplights, like those things are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. And like, there really isn't any innovation there. All they did is they put a smaller battery in it and made it smaller so it was easier to pack into the back of your small SUV or hatchback to go to your gig. That's like, people love these, like, oh, this is great, but that's not an innovation. It's just that's just one of those things that they said, oh, let's see if this works. And for them it worked, and it's been very successful for them. But that's like kind of things that you need to pay attention to, is like some of this stuff is just like, it's not going to exist. Like you might buy something and be like, oh, this is really cool, I love this fixture, I love the style of it, and you buy 8 of them. You're like, okay, cool. I'm going to buy 8 more in like 6 months. Well, in 6 months, that light doesn't exist because you and 5 other people bought it and they're not going to keep on making it. So again, that's like another one of the risks you have to understand if you're looking at these lights. It's you have to do your own research. Like, all right, are there multiple brands offering this? Are there multiple ways to get this? Are there multiple different kind of versions that are all similar? Like, then it's like, okay, like maybe then it's something that you should think about getting, but like you have to be aware, like just because it's like looks cool and new doesn't mean that you're going to be able to buy 8 more, 16 more, 6 months to a year down the line. It's appearance of these lights, there's a lot to it on both ends, on both the Chinese brands and the major manufacturers. And it's not just the outward appearance, it's the internal appearance as well. Brett, what do you kind of think about on that?
The one thing that sticks out to me is the LEDs. The development that these companies do to try to really match the color temperatures, the exact color red or UV or amber, whatever that case may be, where they're developing it through Philips, which is part of the whole UL listings and just the compliance with Philips to make sure that you're getting exactly the right color temperatures and colors that you're actually wanting, where the other ones are just like, yeah, it's close. Put it in a box, yep. Set it off, that type of stuff. And Philips has patents on the LEDs. So like that's another fee that these major US brands are paying. So like that's just another cost. Now, granted, that we are paying for it because we're the end users to the companies, but that they also have to pay because that's just part of the business. That's part of the world of once you develop something that someone already has a patent on, hey, if you're going to use it, you got to pay to play, that type of stuff. So Brian, what are your thoughts? I know I listed the UL listings and of course, Europe has the CE things. Yep. I know you kind of wanted to touch base on your experiences with those.
I'm going to bring in my demonstration light.
Ooh, show and tell.
Ooh, here is, Chinese direct uplight. It looks like a major name brand who developed the lights to look like this. Shocking, I know. We're talking here we're talking about copying, right? This is it. This is a copy. Like this is a copy of a Chauvet light. But I think one of the interesting things is like on this, and I don't know how well, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can probably see it. If you're not watching on YouTube, go to the YouTube channel, take a look. But this says it has this says it. Let me move this little bracket. Let's see. This says it has like the CE listing. One thing it says it has the FCC listing, but it doesn't say UL. So CE in Europe is like the European safety, testing. UL is kind of what we use in North America, and there is usually a number associated with anything that is UL rated. I'm not quite sure on CE, but like you don't see UL on here because it didn't go to underwriters laboratories to be electrically tested. So you do get that when you are getting major name brand lights. They have electrically tested them for safety. I think we've all heard horror stories if you've been around long enough of someone's lights lighting on fire while they were charging or like at an event. Luckily, we've heard a lot less of those stories in the past couple of years, which is a good thing. But at the same time, it's also probably because they've been reverse engineering more on the name brand lights and trying to do that so that they don't get the reputation of having exploding uplights, because nobody wants exploding uplights. So that's one of the things we could get really deep into that. And I think we have someone lined up for a future episode that's going to get much more in depth about that subject with us. But, appearance is important. And, Brent talked kind of about the Philips LED technology and like they do hold the patents on all these. I have definitely been in Facebook groups where there have been people saying that we are all criminals for using these Chinese uplights because they are stealing the patents, and like, yes and no. Like, give me a little bit of a break, right? Philips is a major international corporation. Like this is like one of my like pet peeve rants. Like they are a major international corporation. Other DJs, you are not the patent police. Like, do you think Philips needs your help going after DJs for using Chinese uplights? No, they don't. They have their lawyers. They have their teams. They are picking their battles. They're going toe to toe with the people that they want to and need to go toe to toe with. So like some of these brands now have existed for like 10 years and they're still putting out lights. So for the love of God, like make your own decisions, but don't be the patent police, because you're not. Just stop. Just stop. Yeah. That's one of my drives me up the wall. It's like, you are like, who are you? Like, stop. I got to bring it back to the appearance thing. because I think that this is really important, especially with the LEDs. So Brent is talking about, the colors and making sure they're bright. Like if you are buying different brands of factory direct uplights, like at some point you're going to notice that the warm white that you have dialed in on one is not the same as it is on the other. And I mean, I have that. Like I've got these. I've got the IR4 style lights, and like my candle light on these is different than my candle light numbers on the IR4s, even though they're still, RGB, AW, UV LEDs. Like it's not consistent. And now that means that I have to, whether I'm doing it in sound switch, whether I'm doing it on the Wolf mix, I have to dial in two different colors for those brands of lights. And I have to think about my placement of those lights to make sure that, they work the way I want them to work and the color temperatures do stay somewhat consistent. When you get into more party mode, less important, less noticeable, doesn't stand out as much. Like people aren't necessarily paying attention to that. But like if you walk into a room that you've uplit with that candlelight and it's like one is, one candlelight is amber and one is a cooler white, like people are going to notice that it's not going to look good. And if you're working with planners, like they're going to notice that and they are going to comment on it and ask you to fix that. So like that's where it gets very important for you to understand how to dial in the colors right, and we will definitely talk more about that. But that is one of those things that you're kind of, a trade-off. And like you'll have shifts even from like if you're mixing Chauvet and ADJ, like you're gonna have color shifts, but I think they can be way more dramatic when you are using the factory direct lights. And even even when it comes down to the lensing on these lights, you'll see much more color shifts like at the base and like shadows of the different LEDs. Whereas when you're doing the bigger brands, they've tweaked the lenses to make sure that like it's a little bit of a smoother look. There are ways to combat that, which we are also going to talk about in a future episode, which works well for both Chinese and major manufacturers. So it's definitely, you have to be, again, cognizant of what you're getting and be willing to deal with the nuance of it. Brent, do you have any other thoughts here on this appearance element? I mean, maybe the external design of some of these lights.
Yeah. I'm just gonna bring it back to like it. They are being a magician. They are showing you what you want to see, but inside there's, I mean, yeah, there's gonna be a power supply. There's gonna be the LEDs, the little fans and whatnot. Like those elements are there, but it might be a cheaper part because they don't care about the quality of the product. They just want to make everything as cheap as possible so that then they can offer it at 90% off the total cost of the name brand. So again, it's just one of those things. Where do you want to spend your money, and do you want to take on that risk? So with that, I think I know Brian's answers here, and I'm sure he'll be curious on what my answer is for this. But what Chinese brands are you willing to invest and pay for your company, Brian?
Yeah, for sure. I have bought a few of the different brands, and there are some that are very prevalent that advertise very well. Some of them I have been provided free product to test. Some of them I have purchased myself, and some of them I've done both. So, I will say I do tend to buy my uplights direct from both, from the factory side, and I've had pretty good experience with them. I wouldn't say that everything is 100%, but I've definitely, I've had good experiences with them, and I've also, I've bought sheds. I've been provided product to test from sheds. And I think like there are so brands, sometimes I've had good luck with them. Sometimes I've been like, this doesn't really work the way I want it to. And then, but they're an interesting one because they're one of these brands, that we've talked about that's been around now for quite a while. And they're coming out with newer stuff and they're coming out with more interesting things. Then I think the other one that I can tell you that I don't have a ton of experience with yet, but they have really been making a heavy push in the past year is B-Topper. I couldn't tell you either way on those. I see a lot of their stuff being pushed and people talking about it, but it's not a brand that I would necessarily say you could get and it's going to be relatively okay. I mean, I think the both stuff you're going to be relatively okay with. I think the shed stuff, for the most part, you're going to be relatively okay with. The one brand that I actually do find really interesting from China, and you are going to spend a little bit more to purchase it, is Visho. So I don't know a lot about their history. I'm pretty sure that they are definitely, for some of the mid-major brands, I'm not like the Chauvets and ADJs, that they are manufacturing and rebadging some of their lights for them. But the stuff that I've bought from them, I've been very impressed with the quality of it, both of the light, of the actual build of the fixture itself. So I think we're kind of getting into this interesting world now where there's like cheap Chinese brands, and then there's good Chinese brands. And I think we're going to start seeing more of that, in the future. But one of the other things that I think we also kind of need to think about with this is we touched on the apple and the kitten lights kind of at the beginning of the show. Some of these brands are just apple and kitten rebranded to be a brand name, and they're not necessarily the manufacturer, and some of them are still just being middlemen and getting it from a different factory and slapping their name on it and selling to the US market. And this is probably something that they're never going to tell you that. And you have to start to figure that out as you delve into the world of Alibaba or AliExpress or whatever source you want to use to check these lights out. Like, you're going to start to see the same exact light under different brands, and it's same channels, same features. Sometimes it's even the same marketing materials. So like, that's another thing that you have to think about. Like, are they sourcing the cheapest version of this light from someone else and then trying to sell it to me at a huge markup? Because yeah, they probably are. So it's definitely important to do your research and to kind of study these brands and see what actually seems like they are making it in their factory and selling it to you. VShow is one that I am relatively confident is doing that. And I said that probably like 85-90% of these brands are not doing any development, and they're a brand that I have seen come out with a couple of things that I feel like were innovative and new. So I think we will see more of that in the coming years. But again, it's buyer beware. Like, you got to know, like, or you got to do your research to find out, is this just a rebranded, even crappier light than I thought it was?
Yeah, 100%. I'd kind of agree with you on VShow. They've been something that I've always kept my eye on in terms of their product development, of what they're coming out with, what they're literally trying to throw on the wall and see what sticks. And then there's another brand that's kind of more, it's like the Chinese version for professional lights in that aspect, and it's called Volux, Volux. They are technically under the brand of DVS, which makes video walls that we have. So I know a little bit about them, but pretty much I'm sure like DVS is being the middleman for this company, that they're making it but they're trying to rebuild they're trying to build their lighting market to jump into the lighting industry, since they already have video walls. So that's something I've been keeping my eye on. But I mean, both of those companies make some good stuff when it comes to different things that we're not seeing. Like, a wash light is a wash light. An uplight is an uplight. If it looks like the Chauvet one, or if it looks like the Blizzard, what looks like a PAR or the 80J type stuff. Yep. So it's just a matter of seeing what's different. So that's kind of just my two tick of companies that I've been kind of keeping my eye on from there. And don't get me wrong, when I first started out, I had some used lights that I'm pretty sure I bought from Ben Stowe that were not name brands. They were like literally just trying to get rid of. Back in the day, the fans were noisy. Like the color, back to the color temperatures. Like
noisy fans.
Yeah, I had 4 uplights that I know. Like, when I did purple, I had to go and fix the purple because those 4 were not matched with anything else in the room, and it totally, and I was young. I wouldn't say dumb. Like, I'll say it. Young and dumb. Like, I didn't know better. I thought, oh yeah, these are all made at the same time. Like, when you buy a video wall, they make a batch of your video wall. So if you don't buy, they make it in thousands or whatever. And if you don't buy, if you buy your first batch, and then if you want to expand on what you currently have, you got to buy it pretty soon thereafter, because if not, they're going to start a new batch, and those LEDs are not close at all. And you can kind of say the same with uplights, because either something changes, because it's technology, it's literal science and physics of it. Like, it's not going to be the same, no matter if it's the same company, name brand or Chinese. So I know we talked a lot about this, and again, we were just scratching the surface of factory direct Chinese versus the name brands. And Brian mentioned that we're going to bring some guests onto the future episodes here to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that, so that, again, we're not debating anything. We're not trying to fight people to, stay name brand or whatnot. It's literally like the education side, to understand and know what the actual difference is, so that when you are buying these fixtures, you understand that, okay, I'm tech and I can fix some stuff. I don't mind spending X amount on these uplights because I can put it on the bench and fix it. or I don't have the time. My clients expect and deserve the best. I need to make sure all this stuff works at the right time. I need to buy X for this because this fits what I need, that type of stuff. So yeah, any closing thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, the classic consumer, line, buyer beware. It's know what you're getting yourself into, and don't expect to have the same level of quality, support, materials from a factory direct light that you're going to get from a Chauvet, from an 80J light. Like, you just, you will be a much happier business owner and DJ if you just accept that, instead of trying to think that the world is all the same, because it's not.
It is definitely not. So if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions or want us to answer in a future episode. Subscribe to the channel. We're trying to build all of our followings up. And of course, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, definitely leave us a review. And then if you would like to leave a question, the email is lightsatfullthepod@gmail.com. And of course, you can see all of that information in the show notes below. I'm Brent Schmidt, Cleveland, Ohio.
Brian Smith, Boston, Massachusetts.
And we'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everyone.